Then all of a sudden, every animal I would see, I would start to have that connection with. I would see rabbits in my backyard, and normally they just run away. But guess what they do? They'd sit there and they just stare in my eyes, and I'd stare in their eyes, and I would do the same thing, consciously communicate.
You talk about the work of Nikola Tesla. He was a humanitarian. You have aligned yourself in those same, walks of life as well, because you want to change the world by changing plastic, renewable energy. You want to clean things up and make things back to way they were or way they should be. How does that apply, or how is that connected to your spirituality?
So my connection to nature is very deep and expansive. When I was in high school around my sophomore year, that was when I really started to get a connection with nature on a deeper level. I remember I would just go out into this forest nearby, this local forest, just a part of my neighborhood, and I would just walk. I would literally just be there and just walk through, you know, and just observe the trees and the water, the rocks, just everything, and not just like internally just be mesmerized by the beauty, and just like sometimes I just ask myself things like, wow, like how'd this form? Like how'd these rocks form? How'd this sand get here and stuff? And around that same time, sophomore year, I also started gardening. So I really was getting into nature on deep levels, getting hands on, getting in there. And at that level, it really was just a level of I'm just doing this thing. I'm just gardening because it's cool to garden. I'm just going into nature because it's a cool thing to do on my pastime. But as I started going more and more, it it changed from something that was just I'm just doing this to now I'm starting to notice patterns of life within nature. Instead of me just seeing a beautiful tree, now I'm seeing a tree that has experienced good times and hardships, a tree that has experienced pain, but also triumph over that pain, looking into the bark, seeing the scars, but then also looking at the new branches and the thousands of leaves that it's putting out, which end up eventually falling off again into the ground, and seeing how those leaves that fall into the ground end up revitalizing the whole nature, the whole forest. So I started to really pay attention to things, and it got deeper and deeper. It got so deep where it became now I'm looking at it as at the level of energy. I'm looking at water and seeing spirals and vortices within that water, the same type of energy that's within every one of us, and noticing how water makes up everything. So we all have those spirals inside of us, the same spirals that running water has. That's life. So tying nature into my spirituality, going out there more and more, it became a spiritual practice. It became a ritual. It became like church for me. You know, like I would see it as, when I go to church, that's like a building made by man. But who created nature? The creator. So that's like the church created by the creator. So I was going out there, and I still go out there almost every day because it's such a deep connection that I feel out there. I don't necessarily label myself as an in particular spiritual practice or religion, but what I do know is I follow what's right and what's righteous, and I follow what my soul yearns me towards. And when it comes to nature, I have such a strong magnetism towards Mother Earth, Gaia, Sophia. Her energy is so right, and it's so tangible, it's so real. The spiritual connection I have with her is as real as the connection that we all have with her. Being able to just go pick up a handful of dirt, that's how it very much is. And understanding our connection, the connection that we all have as beings. When I go into the forest, I'm going as a human, but when I see a deer or I see a bird or even the trees, I notice that we all have a connection, and we all can communicate on levels beyond just the tangible universe and reality that we're used to.
That's interesting that you said that you have a connection. And previous in our conversation, you said that you went out and you saw the deer and the deer's babies with them, and you approached them. Kind of revisit that moment for me.
So one of my favorite and most memorable moments in nature was I was out there in the forest, and I saw this mother deer. Now, mind you, before this, I actually had dreams of seeing deer in nature and speaking with them. So I saw this mother deer, and we spotted each other. And normally, when a deer sees a human, they're running, especially a mother deer with her babies. But
Right.
she didn't run; she just stared at me, and I stared at her, and we locked eyes. And I couldn't help but feel something behind those eyes. It was not just I'm just staring into a creature. No, there was something there. So I remember consciously communicating, like I want her to feel and know that I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm here to experience nature just like you. So I consciously, with intent, kind of like sent that to her through my eyes. And after I did that, she looked away, she put her tail down, she was no longer worried, and she just started walking normally, eating, doing her thing. And I started doing my thing too. And guess what? Her babies, the does, not the does, the fawn, the same way. They were they were actually a lot more comfortable around me than she was. But when in that moment, I realized how deep this connection is. I realized how I'm going into the forest seemingly as an individual, but when I'm going there, not only am I like on a physical level, like leaving my scent, but I'm connecting with the trees, I'm connecting with the water's connecting with the dirt is connected to the deer. So we're all connected. And then we all of our roots and all of our wires go back down to Mother Earth. So when you just make that effort of being a part of the forest becomes you too. And now we're all one. I like to look at it a lot like this. If you ever observe nature, you'll realize that like rabbits, deer, birds, chipmunks, squirrels, they will all be around each other and not freak out. They will all eat around each other. They will never at any moment think that one of them is trying to eat each other, even if some of them just start moving quick. But it's when you have a human or maybe a coyote or a bear or a predator walking, then all of them run away. So I would observe that and I'd be like, okay, let me be one of them. Let me be a deer with the deer, a rabbit with the rabbits. And when I open my mind to that, like I want to be a part of that ecosystem of peace, like
Mhm.
laying down with the lamb. Then all of a sudden, every animal I would see, I would start to have that connection with. I would see rabbits in my backyard, and normally they just run away. But guess what they do? They'd sit there and they'd just stare in my eyes, and I'd stare in their eyes, and I would do the same thing, consciously communicate. I'm safe.
Mhm.
I'm okay. And now, every time I see those rabbit in my backyard, they don't run from me. They run from everybody else, but not me. And then there was my last favorite example in my backyard. I saw this snake. It was a black racer snake. They're not venomous in any way. But I knew that if my people in my house saw that snake, they would kill it. So I was doing everything I could to try to catch the snake to get it out and try not to get bit myself because it would hurt beyond anything else. Anyways, at some point, the snake had just popped its head out of the corner I was trying to get it out of, and it stared in my eyes, and I stared in its eyes, and I heard from the snake, like kind of almost like in my mind, I heard, "You're trying to get me. You're trying to grab me to get me out of here. I'm trying to leave. That's where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to exit this backyard because I know what you're telling me is not safe. Just let go and let me do it." And guess what I did? At that point, I stopped. I had some tongs, like salad tongs. I was trying to grab it and stuff. And I just walked away, and
Mhm.
then the snake left. It left,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
it's so much deeper than just like we see animals, we see trees. It's so much deeper than just a tree, just an animal. This energy behind it, and we're all intertwined like that.
Mhm. It's interesting that you say that, because when I have dialogues and talk to people about spirituality, a lot of people, they fail to even mention nature.
So with Mother Earth and nature, Mother Nature, Sophia, Gaia, going out there so frequently and having the intent of I'm going out here to connect with her, it got to the point where I started to just see trees and I just, in my head, I just asked the tree a question. Then I would hear something back. And then I would ask the ground a question. I would hear something back. Because it's all in my head, telepathically, you could say. And then I went even deeper. I visualized the center of the earth, Mother Earth. I asked her a question, and I heard something back in my head. And there's been so many moments in my life where real tangible decisions I've made were things that she told me months in advance. You know, real big decisions, things like breakups, for example, right? Or things like business decisions. She would tell me up front. Most of the time, I'll be in denial. I wouldn't want to hear it. And then a little bit later, I would get a discernment within my soul telling me, you need to make that choice. Or you need to listen to what she told you. And then in the end, it always ends up happening. And it was in that moment because when I talked to her, she's a very peaceful being. So of course, if you ask her things like, hey, you know, Mother Nature, you love me, she's gonna be like, of course I love you and stuff. But it's when she started to say things I didn't want to hear, but I knew I needed, that's when I realized, wait a minute, I'm not just talking to myself. Because like sometimes I'd be upset. I wouldn't understand why she would say these things to me, such big decision making things, but I would always know, I could always feel that it was coming from a place of pure love and it was what was right for me. And that goes down the path of righteousness. Your roots and your foundation are everything and everything you do in life. Mm-hmm. And my roots and my foundation are tied with nature, that purity, that sanctity, because no matter how far we build up, we're always going to be building on materials from things that come from the earth. And that's how I see it spiritually as well. She is the ultimate foundation. You know, you mentioned how people will bring up spirituality and not bring up nature. And I think that's a shame because you can tie back every single religion, every single spirituality thing back to principles in nature, every single one of them. You know, even you know, Jesus, a lot of Jesus's teachings would be done in nature. He would do them near trees, on the ocean, on the beach. It's all representative because I like to see it like this. Like I said before, the creator created nature. So nature is like the codec, the fabric, the perfection that was created by the creator. And if you really observe it, the patterns, the way how nature balances itself out always, even after crazy things like forest fires, volcanoes, meteors, whatever, it always balances itself out. It is the best technology on earth.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's interesting. That's interesting what you're saying because I've been studying a little bit more about Nikola Tesla, the Fibonacci sequence, the 369, you know, the pyramids and, you know, the ley lines and the electromagnetic fields, you know, not just of the earth, but of our bodies. When it comes to that level of understanding, the coding and things of that nature, have you gotten into that to better understand nature, or is it just more of a conversation? It's an experience that you go in and a communication that you have with nature.
One of my favorite things about nature is how all of her principles are spiritually scientific. Because, you know, there's usually that contrast, that yin yang, like science and spirituality. Nature is both put together, you know. So, especially speaking on the diet part, you know, I myself, I am plant-based. So I consume only plants. But with that being said, beyond that, everything is energy, of course. And water has memory. So it's very important, no matter what you're consuming, that it's sourced from the best possible source. Even a plant grown in water that has had a very bad memory put into it, that's going to reflect in the way the plant is grown, etc. Mm-hmm. So being a gardener, I'm a very avid gardener. I very much pay attention to my food nutrition choices because, as you were saying, it's not about having a heavy stomach. It's about your body knowing when you're full because of the information being relayed, the nutrient density of the foods, right? The quality of the water. And something I noticed when you garden at home, every single thing from your garden has more water in it than anything from the store. Stuff from the store almost seems dehydrated, especially tomatoes. Like tomatoes from the garden are like bleeding out water. You cut it open. The ones from the store, it's like, what? So it's all a science, absolutely. And like I said, that's what I really love about it, because you look into scientists, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, they studied nature. They literally did it. All of their principles, theory of relativity, energy can be created or destroyed. All of that is found in nature's been mastering these principles. All we did as humans is just observe them and put a name to them. But nature's been doing them, and nature has perfected it itself around that, to where it's like an infinitely self-sustaining, self-healing computer. And it's so ironic, because you look at a tree, you look at this in nature, in society, what do we call that? Oh, that's primal. But when you actually break down nature and compare it technology wise, nature is the best technology on earth. We do not have anything where you can take a seed that weighs it less than an ounce, you put it in the grounds, and a couple of years later, it becomes a tree that weighs tons. We don't have a technology that can do that, and we never truly will. And almost all of our best technologies are biomimicry, just studying nature and applying it in our own man-made way. So when it comes to the science, even the things that I do, turning plastic into fuel, that is a scientific principle of nature, pyrolysis. So it's just always so much to study and so much to see and learn. But when you really start to tie together the scientific side of it with the energy side of it, a lot like you did with the water and the memory and the information, that's when you really start getting deep in nature, and you start to almost like you're like cracking a code. It's like a cheat
Mhm.
code, because now you're learning things and seeing things that most people don't have access to. Now you're gaining esoteric information that only those with a real deep connection to nature, beyond just scientific or beyond just spiritual, are getting.
That's interesting, and especially the part when you was talking about the side. My aunt, she has lemon trees. She has two different types of lemon trees, and one of her lemon trees is a Japanese lemon tree, and that those lemons are massive. And it's interesting that lemons, which are really great for colds, right? They grow in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I never knew that, because I've always seen lemons in the store, year round. So you
Right.
really don't know when certain fruits and vegetables grow, unless you actually garden like yourself. So what are some other foods that grow in nature that are specific to the season that are good for your body at that particular time?
My mom used to tell me that her grandmother would make a tea out of red onions
Mm.
whenever she gets sick, and my mom would be like, "I hated it. It tasted horrible, but it worked." And there's so many plants that have that type of like connection,
Mm-hmm.
especially health wise. Like for example, walnuts are good for the brain. The brain. If you look at a walnut, it looks like your brain. It has two hemispheres.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, what else is there? Blackberries are
Mm-hmm.
good for your. I'm pretty sure they're good for your skin. I mean, look how much like pigment they have, right? Makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. I'm pretty sure they also berries have properties in them that are like similar to sunscreen, because they're so dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have those same type of similar properties, and then that's kind of like um, what is the word? It's kind of like reflected in your body internally when you consume them. So there's so many things in nature that are like reflected.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as within, so without with the food. So foods are so important, the right type of food, and being conscious of what you're putting in, when you're putting certain food into your body. It's a major part of who you are. They say you are what you eat, and essentially you are, because as within, so without. Your brain or your gut has neurological tissue within it. So your gut is literally a second mind. You can
Mm-hmm.
train your body, train your spirit, literally based off of what you eat.
Mm. Turning plastic into fuel. How did that actually come about?
So I was in my senior year of high school, and I had my hand cut by a peer of mine, and my tendon was cut completely, so I couldn't use my right hand at all. It was on a splint. And in that time, I wasn't able to really do much. except for things like meditating, studying nature. I barely could even garden. So I spent a lot of my time in nature, and the revelation came to me because I was out there in nature, just like you say. I saw plastic in the forest, in this sanctuary, and I was like, that's just so disrespectful. But then nature talked to me. Nature told me, why don't you do something about it? Like, what do you mean? But that opened my mind though, just thinking like that, because there's two different perspectives. There's the perspective of like looking at a problem and being like, that's horrible. And then there's the perspective of looking at the problem and saying, I'm doing something about it. That's horrible, but I'm going to make it better. So she told me that, and it opened my mind so much, because we normally see the plastic problem and we always put that on somebody else. That plastic's in the forest, well, it's because they littered. That plastic's in the ocean, well, it's because they didn't recycle. We blame it on other people, forgetting that we're all connected, and knowing that if you're putting effort towards something, it will be reflected in everybody else and everything around you. So when she told me that, when I went home, I started to research things. I started to research, okay, what can be done to plastic to recycle it that we're not doing now? Because what we're doing now isn't working clearly. So what will work? And I found the process of pyrolysis, which is the process of essentially turning plastic into fuel by heating it up without air. Now, that process is an ancient process. It's not a new technology. It actually was invented by nature herself. When crude oil forms in the ground from organic matter, let's just say dinosaurs, that's what they say. Most crude oil actually is formed from algae, but we'll say dinosaurs for the record, because that's what they all say, right? The dinosaurs get buried underground. They're organic matter, flesh and bone. They're underground buried. What's underground? A lot of pressure and also a lot of heat from the Earth's core. What's also underground? A lack of air. So when you have that heat, that pressure, and no air, a fire does not start. The dinosaurs and stuff don't catch on fire. Instead, they break down into their basic molecular and chemical components. That is the exact process the Earth does to turn organic matter into crude oil. And now we're turning crude oil into gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, also plastic. Plastic is made from crude oil. So essentially, I looked at that. I knew that it was made of petroleum. I'm like, let's just reverse the process. And the truth is, everything that's ever been unearthed, all the metals we've dug up from the ground, all the plastic, everything will always return back in time. So in time, all the plastic that's in the ocean and landfills will all eventually turn back to oil, but we're all going to be gone by then. Let's speed it up. So that way, when we are here, our oceans are beautiful. That way, when we are here, we are respecting her. So reversing that process of turning plastic in, or turning crude oil into plastic, turning plastic back into crude oil, you have to use heat, because heat is a universal destroyer, like a forest fire, a volcano, meteor. All these things are heat, solar flares. It's a universal way to break things down. So I knew that, but you can't just burn plastic. You can't just set it on fire. That's going to make all those horrible toxins. So that's where pyrolysis comes in, because there's no oxygen, but you're still heating it up. So instead of catching on fire, smoke, toxins, you're heating it up and almost vaporizing it, distilling it. Just like how water has a cycle, water turns from ice to water to steam, turn that plastic from the solid plastic to a liquid plastic to steam plastic, you could say. And that steam, that vapor, ends up becoming the vapor form of crude oil, which is then condensed, just like clouds condense rain. We condense that into the oils. So as you see in this explanation, it's very tied to nature, the water cycle, nature, the carbon cycle, nature turning things herself into crude oil. It's all tied together. And that's the beauty of having that connection with nature, because she opened my mind to it, but she was also the teacher of it, because it all came back down to her.
How do you think she feels about that? That there's so much litter, so much plastic. How do you think she feels about that? And what are some ways that you would say that she responds to let people know, but we're just not listening?
I've actually asked her before because I was very upset one day just looking at all the trash, and I was like, you know what, Mother Nature, why aren't you upset? Why don't you just do something? Why don't you just like swallow all these people? They're just all these big companies. And she said, I'm not upset. It actually deepens my love for everybody because I'm learning true unconditional love. I'm learning that, ironically, from the outside perspective, our limited human perspective, we see this as absolute disrespect, but it actually is out of love, everything that we're doing, because what we're doing is we're challenging nature. We're challenging her in a way she hasn't been challenged before. And she very much loves and appreciates that because she knows that that's what every single thing needs for growth, uncomfortability. We're putting her in an uncomfortable spot. So she sees, despite our perspective, we're seeing it as absolute disrespect, evil. She sees it as we love her so much that we're hurting her. That's real deep, isn't it?
That's
We
deep.
love her so much that we're hurting her just so she can grow to be even stronger. Because now things are happening. Now we have bacteria and fungi adapting to eat plastic. Just found out in the wild. So what's happening is nature, as she always does, is adapting and becoming stronger and balancing out.
Mhm.
So that's how she sees it. And that's so beautiful because you know what? A lot of people who throw plastic in the ocean or in the forest, they don't care about her. They don't even know about her. But she sees it very similar to how Jesus saw the people who were killing him. When Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." She sees it as it's just ignorance. If they knew better, they would do better. And instead of me seeing it as they're my enemy, I'm seeing it as how are they helping me and bettering me? And that perspective is beyond mature. That perspective is so deep. And it's something that I'm still working myself to achieve that type of perspective because that is that ultimate type of liberation, not carrying any type of baggage or resentment against anybody, seeing everything that happens in your life as a betterment towards you because that's what it is because we're all trees. When you're in that place of being upset and resentful, ultimately it helps nobody.
Mhm.
That's why nature didn't even have time to be in that place because, like you said, you were in that place of resentment and being angry, and then you picked up some, but not all of it. You found a different place, and it's still there. So, like, ultimately, progress, nothing progressed, no growth happened for anything because the person who threw that is still going to continue to throw that, and in that state, you were going to just continue to be where you were at, in that place of kind of like anger, and that's why nature, even in the most what we as humans see the most justifiable place to be angry, she doesn't let that be an option because she knows everything is about growth. When you observe trees, that's all they focus on. All
Mhm.
they focus on is growth. They don't care about their neighbors around them. They don't
Mm-mm.
care about the weather, what's going on, what happened. All they're focused on is growth. They don't even care about their injuries. When they
Mm.
get hurt, they seal the wound. Next day, next sprout starts coming out. New leaves. Every day it's just growth, internal growth, because the tree has to grow from the inside before the outside. And that's what it's about. And that's why when I was put onto this journey of turning plastic into fuel, it always felt so right because my foundation was rooted in the same love that is the same type of love that nature has for all of us, and the same love that nature sees even the polluters have for her. It's all a cycle. It's all a closed cycle, water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle. It's just like that. Nothing's created, nothing's destroyed, but it all can be used.
Mhm.
Energy can be transmuted. It can change forms. That's alchemy, where you can take any type of energy, something that you see as horrible, pollution, that's bad energy, alchemize it, turn it into good energy, something that benefits everything. Because I would say a huge thing I learned in nature, one of the deepest lessons, there's this tree I used to see every day. It got struck by lightning. It fell down and it was in its last dying breaths. But you know what the tree was doing in its last dying breaths, the last days it had to live? You know what the tree was doing?
Mm.
It began to flower.
Mm.
And when what do trees or every plant do when they flower? They're ready to go to seed, to create seeds, to create more trees, which will create more life. So nature taught me that in the hardest times, the toughest times, of the most stress, when you feel like it's the ends,
Mhm.
create life. Don't be in a state of resent. Imagine if a tree was resenting the lightning strike.
Mhm.
It's just going to end up just suffering, decaying, nothing. But that tree at least tried in its last days to create more life. It was still trying to grow. The tree was completely on its side like this, and then there were sprouts coming out the side trying to regrow a whole new tree. It
Right.
never stopped growing,
Mhm.
even when it was time's up.
Mm. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. You know, and I want to change, directions real quick, but just kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying, it's kind of like almost like with people, dealing with type of energies with individuals, you know what I mean, and aligning yourself with the right people, because if you align yourself with the wrong people, then you're gonna end up like that tree. You're gonna fall, because some people just don't have your best interests at heart. They're going to set you up for failure, because they're looking out for them own selves. And once they have that opportunity, they're going to cut you loose and then they're going to move forward. You know what I mean? And so, being able to have that power of discernment to be able to read the energy or to understand who this person is before you deal with them. I've heard you say that in the previous interview, that's how you move now. You go to Mother Nature to ask for her advice and things of that nature. So what does that look like on a day that you say, you know what, I need to go to Mother Nature, I gotta ask you something today? Kind of paint that picture. What does that look like?
So when I'm in a decision, when I'm making a decision or I feel some type of way about something, like maybe I'm having a conversation with somebody and it's like to make a big decision and I can just feel like this is a lot. This is a big, heavy decision. It's in those moments when I go to Mother Nature, when I'm like, you know what, this is a lot for me to handle, but let me go to the best grounding thing I have, literally the grounds, Mother Nature, and I just go. Or if I'm very emotional about something, if I've gone through something very tough and very stressful, you know, if it's a very difficult situation. I remember a couple weeks ago I had a situation where this person wanted to hire me for some welding work and he gave me a fake check. I didn't know it was a fake check. I put it into my bank and the bank thought I made the fake check. So they froze all of my money for 2 weeks. And it was so stressful to me. But in those moments, I went into nature and she would just tell me. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted her to kind of pity me and be like, it's okay, I'm sorry. No, she told me it's only gonna make you grow. You're learning. It's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
her perspective is just so mature and so bold and so strong. It cuts through your ego. It's an ego death every time I go out there when I'm feeling some type of way because I want to be catered to. I want to feel like I want to be comfortable. I want to be like, I'm feeling so bad in this state. Tell me everything that's wrong with the world. But no, she cuts right through that and gets to the point. This is making you grow. You don't know why this happened. You don't need to know why. All you need to know is that you're growing and be grateful. And those are the words I hear and she has that pattern because she'll tell you the same things many different ways sometimes, but they always end up being the same thing because that's the truth. Just like with trees, like I said, all they're focused on is growth. That pretty much is the same thing she will always tell you, no matter what happens. You're growing. That's why you're here. That's why you're here as a human experiencing this. As a soul experiencing the human experience, you are here to grow. And that's all that matters, no matter how it looks. So that's what it's like really going to her just in any type of state. And then there will be a lot of times where nothing's going on. I just go out there just to appreciate her, just to pay homage, and just let her, and just tell her thank you for always being there for me and giving me amazing advice. You know,
The magnetron that you're using, it's all magnetic energy, waves, sound, vibrations. It's all nature.
exactly.
Okay.
The magnetron is the device that creates the microwaves, and it's called a magnetron because it has two magnets.
Mhm.
Two magnets, and it has a cavity within it. Sometimes it's called a cavity magnetron. And in short, what happens is high voltage electricity shoots within there, and then this filament has electrons. Well, it's a piece of metal, and the electricity releases the electrons off that metal, and then the magnets, they tune it to the certain frequency to make microwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Microwaves are just a certain type of vibration, a certain type of frequency. Just like the earth gives off a frequency, the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic field of earth, you could say. And those microwaves are then channeled into plastic, tuned to the plastic's vibration, break it down. But so much deeper than that with everything, because this once again goes back to, as you said, biomimicry. Microwaves were created by Earth. All the electromagnetic field was created by Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's the rainbow. All those colors that we see are just different frequencies at a different electromagnetic field, but it's all represented. And tying in everything with spirituality, what's the rainbows? Chakras are the rainbows. What are the chakras? They're things within you that end up having an effect on your whole outward body, as within, so without. You tune those to the right harmony, and now you're living righteously. You see, it's all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beautiful part. You can tie any particular thing in nature together. And then what's also the rainbow? The rainbow's mentioned in the Bible after the flood, right? Representing peace, like a symbol of treaty. And then that once again ties into nature, because, well, what is nature? Nature's peace, nature's treaty. It's that formation, that covenant between us and the creator is nature. Because the rainbow has always been around, but that was the first time it had manifested itself, right? And in that represents dimensions, because the dimensions and everything has always been here, but we just had to see it. We just had to open our perspective to see it, and that's how everything operates, off those same types of patterns. And when it comes to nature, at any level of being in nature, whether you are spending the night or just taking a walk, with that intent, that's the key. So the best time is always now. When it comes to these types of things, you're going to create an amazing foundation for yourself. I need you to remember that. Yes, we have this world. We have the social world, the corporate world, the business world to live in. But you also have to remember you have your world. You have to remember not to get too much caught into your work or your projects, that you forget that you are your biggest work and your biggest project. And one of the best investments you can give to yourself is a connection, the foundation that has brought us all here, and that everything that we have ever built is built off of. So get in nature, and all of a sudden, you're going to notice that no matter what happens in all these other worlds, you have the best world, which is your world, which is within you and outside of you, that you can always connect back to and find your roots in. So my name is Julian Brown. I go by Naturejab. I turn plastic waste into fuel. That's what I do in absolute respect for nature. Naturejab.com, www.naturejab.com. That's my website. All my social media handles are Naturejab, Nature, J-A-B, all one word. My Instagram is Naturejab_. I do have a crowdfunding campaign. Help me raise some money for my project. I built 4 prototypes in my backyard of plastic to fuel devices, and I am now going to be building my first ever industrial prototype this year.